automation and optimization is a muscle. So there's two things to think about. One is the word every. You've heard me say this before. Anytime you hear the word every, like every time we get a new job, every time a customer complains, every time they see a new review on Google, the word every tells you that this is repeatable. It's repetitive rather. So if it's repetitive, you probably can automate all of it. And if you can't do all of it, I guarantee you can do some of it. That's a replacer. And those are the small things. And those are the things that might take 1 or 2 minutes every time, but they're adding up to, hours and hours. And then the other one is think less sometimes about automating tasks and more about automating decisions.
Today's episode is brought to you by one of our show partners, UpFrog.
UpFrog is the OG when it comes to pricing transparency online. They find system replacement leads through paid ads and have developed an entire system to drive those hard-to-find system replacement opportunities, nurture the leads, and book them into sold systems before your team arrives to help you grow your business.
Learn more at upfrog.io. I want to give a huge shout out to Marcus Storm for sponsoring today's episode.
You've heard of Google ads, Facebook ads, and SEO, but did you know that there's an entire ecosystem, like 80% of the internet, that ads can be served on that you barely heard about?
That's where Marcus Storm operates.
They leverage data science and AI to build customer profiles for your ideal customers and get your ads in front of prospects before they are ready to hire a pro, planting your brand in their minds early and often.
To chat with a team about how they can help you grow your business, visit marcusstorm.ai.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a wonderful day. You're listening to or watching the Service Business Mastery podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tersh Blissett, and Josh, my co-host, is not with us today, but I have the world famous Ari Meisel on the podcast today. He's been a longtime mentor of ours, and if you paid attention to anything that Josh and I have talked about, especially pertaining to less doing or optimize, automate, and delegate. It came from this fellow here, and that we learned a ton of information from Ari. We've gone and done in-person events with him and used his coaching services. There's so many things that I've learned from Ari from a distance. And even like I thought I had some amazing ideas. And the first time that we talked to Ari, he was like, "Oh no, you should try it this way." And I was like, "Oh, actually that's a great idea." And it was email automation, because I don't know if you remember this, Ari, but when we first spoke, and it's been a couple years ago now, I think, I was talking about, I have an auto responder set up for my email saying, "Hey, I only check my email twice a day." So I'm going to, basically setting up the expectations of the recipient that hey, this is asynchronous conversation. But I didn't know that that's what I was trying to say until later on. But the way that I said it, you were like, "Yeah, but that's not reality, is it? Like, you do check your email more than twice a day, right?" And I was like, "Guilty, yes." And so then if you do immediately respond to them, then they're like, "Oh, you're a liar." Or you're not actually doing this asynchronously. You're doing it, you're responding immediately. I'm like, yeah. And so I actually ultimately got rid of that process of that autoresponder on my emails, and then actually started setting up the unsubscribe automation. Do you remember that, Ari? Yeah. And then I made a mistake on it, and I think I've heard you talk about this mistake also. You cannot send, just because it says unsubscribe, you can't get rid of it completely, because my wife was sending me emails. She was forwarding me things that had unsubscribe in the comments or in the section, in the body of it. And then it was immediately being forwarded to spam or somewhere else. And the next thing you know, I'm not getting any emails from my wife. And she's like, "Why are you ignoring all my emails?" I was like, "Oh, crap. What did I do?" So with that being said, that's a long intro. Ari is a mentor of mine, and there's so much that I could say about Ari, but I think it would be best if you share a little bit about yourself, Ari, and kind of how you've gotten to where you're at right now in life.
I'm settling in. I'm a little bit flustered at the moment. Just because I was telling Tersh before, I'm not just a pretty face. My background is in construction, and I've worked in almost every trade that I can think of. And I just had to deal with an issue with an ejector pump in my house because I have a 14-year-old boy who doesn't understand about flushing wipes.
Okay.
And it just exploded on me, basically.
No.
covered head to toe in cold, dirty water. And it's like,
Mhm.
the only saving grace for me is it's only his bathroom. So in my head, it's like, it's only my son. It's my son.
Yeah.
It's only him.
Yeah.
That was not how I was planning on getting cleaned up after like 10 minutes before this event. So
Yeah.
I did fix it though.
Good. That's
Anyway,
never fun there.
I got her immediately.
Yeah. Well, so we have a septic tank, and my house was built in 1983. And so we've had multiple times where like we've had a drain fill issue. We've had, backed up septic tank, and it always happens at the most inconvenient time. Like every time it happens, it's like, hey, Dad, there's an emergency going on. I'm in the middle of something right now.
Yeah. Anyway, the way I got here before that is, so as I said, I actually was working in construction when I got out of college. I did this big redevelopment project in upstate New York in a place called Binghamton, and rehabbed these old warehouse buildings from the 1860s into high-end loft living. And essentially the deal was, if you work on this job, you got to teach me your trade. So I spent 3 years like learning and doing pretty much every trade there is.
Wow.
Got particularly good at masonry, which when you're doing that in a really cold climate, I feel like those guys are the ones that they need to study in terms of like, they will never die. I remember one day I was laying brick and it was 8 below, and you're like, you laid 3 bricks and then you go over to the jet heater to like get your fingers working. It's crazy. Good times, but not particularly good on my body. I was working crazy amount of hours. I was under a lot of stress, not to mention the $3 million of debt that I racked up by the time I was 23. And my body basically broke in the form of Crohn's disease. So I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is a chronic inflammatory condition that affects the digestive tract. It is extremely painful and debilitating, and it is considered to be incurable. It's a lifelong diagnosis.
That's what I thought.
Though after a couple of years of after several months of getting sicker and sicker and getting put on a lot of meds, I started to try to turn things around. I got really into the biohacking movement and tracking and experimentation, all sorts of stuff, and started to get better. And what I realized very quickly, or what I was made to realize very quickly, was that I had gone from working 18 hours a day to barely being able to do an hour of work in a day because I was just so weak and sick, unmotivated. So that extreme restriction on my time is what led to everything since then. That question is something I ask a lot of myself and of coaching clients and people is, what would you do if you could only work an hour a day? And what's interesting about that is it's very different than saying, like, what would you do if you had to leave the office an hour early, right? That's like, well, I'd skip lunch or whatever.
Sure.
If you could only work an hour a day, then the question at that point really becomes not what would you do, but wouldn't you do? And if the things you wouldn't do still need to get done, then who or what is going to do them for you? So that is where optimize, automate, and outsource came from and built from there. And ultimately, after about 2 years, I was able to get off all my meds and I've not taken medicine, and I've been pain-free. And actually there have been doctors who have said, like, it's impossible what I did.
Yeah.
And I still credit about 80% of that to creating a new system of productivity to deal with the stress that I was experiencing at the time. And so that evolved into coaching and speaking and books and all that kind of stuff, and eventually became more of a business-focused methodology that I called the replaceable founder.
Yeah.
Is to make everybody in the business as replaceable as possible so that the business can operate without you, whether you want to be or not.
What do you say to people whenever they're like, yeah, but I don't want to be replaced, or there's like an ego, or it's like, you can't replace me. I'm the person who came up with all this stuff.
Yeah. So yes, I can, first of all. And because I've done it many, many, many times for that exact question, but it's a good distinction, because I don't want to replace people. I want to make people replaceable.
Yes.
So there's a very subtle but important difference, right? If you're making yourself replaceable, that means you're putting systems and processes in place that make it so that the business can operate without you, if you so choose to not only not be there for some reason, but hey, go somewhere else and learn something new that you can then contribute back into the business. Being replaced is very different, and that's not the goal. It happens, but that is not the goal.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you can't do that, then you don't really have a business. You just own your own job.
Yes. That's exactly what I was getting at, because there's so many times where us as contractors, will not get out of a truck. Like, so we're HVAC or plumber, and like we started our own plumbing company, and it's like, all right, well, you got to get out the truck in order to grow the business. And then the next thing you know, you're like, well, I can't get out of truck because I'm doing all the sales, or I can't get out of truck because like nobody knows how to do this the way that I do, type of thing. What's your thought on that? Like, obviously you have to do it if you want to grow the business or scale the business, or, I mean, you have to put people in place inside the office. But kind of riff off of that. And these aren't even questions that I have for you. These are just things that I know that you talk on all the time.
There is a big ego element to that, right? This idea of like, only I can do it, or only I can do it this way. And here's the thing. That doesn't apply to me. That doesn't apply to anybody listening. There are very few, and I'm actually struggling to even think of an example of any one person that is truly the best in the world at the thing they do. Yeah. I'm sure it exists. I'm sure there are people that, objectively could say like, there is no one better than this person. And it's probably in something that's very, very, very niche.
Yeah.
The person that knows everything about a particular Egyptian leader.
Yeah.
2,000 years ago, like that person.
Yeah.
Nobody knows more than that person. Okay, great. But for things like trades, for things like coaching and what I do, there are a lot of other people that teach productivity and they do a great job at it. And there's people that benefit from it. But fortunately, it's one of those markets where there's so many people that need it that there's sole place for me. That's not the thing that makes you unique, being really good at that thing that you do. The thing that makes you unique ultimately is your perspective, right? And your ability to really communicate and your vision. And so communication is how you communicate to clients. And it doesn't mean sales. It really means like the message that you put out, the legacy that you create, the values that you imbue into the people that work with you so that there's a legacy there. There are well over 1,000 businesses that have been around for hundreds of years in the world. And there's a few that have been around for over 1,000 years. I just did a video the other day on a bakery. The founder of this bakery died 795 years ago.
Wow.
And the bakery is still operating.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the interesting sort of message there was like, as the entrepreneur, you're not supposed to be baking the bread. You're supposed to be building the bakery.
Yeah.
So
I messaged you a while back about this. I love this series that you've been doing on like TikTok and of these old businesses and how are they still in business? And you make an amazing point there. Like if we're going to make a generational business that's going to last, the generations, removing us from the bottleneck is one of the biggest, like that's a big hurdle to overcome. I mean, ego is a massive part of it. But having those processes and procedures in place, and then not like, I think that what for me, when I was receiving 300 phone calls a day, it was like just ridiculous. It was overwhelming, but it was also a sense of pride. Like, hey, they can't do it without me. Like, this is my ego talking right now. And, 100%, like once I figured out, hey, I'm holding the whole company back right now. Like, this is like, there's no reason for this nonsense. And we're more of chit chatting than we're doing anything else. Like, you don't really need to be calling me for all this nonsense. And I had to implement processes to do away with that so that I could actually grow the businesses.
Yeah. And it's really hard for people to accept that, like, hey, maybe I'm not that important and I'm not, but that, again, that's not our role, right? That's not where we're supposed to be. There's a big difference between most entrepreneurs are getting pulled and the really great entrepreneurs, the really great business owners are pushing.
Ooh.
Right. So you're getting those phone calls all day long, right? That's being pulled. And that feels good, right? Because like, oh, this person needs me. All right. And it's like, I feel this at home in my life. I have 5 children, right? So there is always somebody asking me for something. I have a very demanding family. And fortunately, like I have the energy and I have the stamina to be able to deal with a lot of that stuff. But I definitely have that thing sometimes where it's like, Dad, can you get me this? And it's like, yeah, but then also like, I'm glad that they want me to do it. Like it, it's conflicting. It's really hard. This becomes a whole other issue because there's an ROI attached to it. Like it's a very, very different justification. So it's a lot easier to be like, oh no, this person needs me. This person needs me. That person needs me. It's like, no, they don't actually need you. They need an outcome.
Yeah.
Why is
Absolutely.
it has to provide it?
Yeah. So let's transition a little bit into like productivity and systems and um, the whole thought process behind productivity versus effectiveness, and um, the what like I guess I want to ask, like, what's the evolution in that you've seen in your own thinking and thought process, uh, away from like automation and efficiency and more to like effectiveness and the outcomes.
Yeah. So that speaks to sort of what I was just talking about, which is that we're trying to figure out what an outcome is a lot of times.
Yeah.
So the reason that my system is optimized, automate, outsource is that order is very important because most people do it backwards. A lot of them don't automate at all because they're just not even aware of what's possible. Now that's less of a situation. I feel like a lot more people know that you can automate things. The knee-jerk reaction for most people when they get overwhelmed is, I just need to hire more bodies. I need more bodies. And you can't make a process more efficient by putting more resources into it. You can do it by putting the right resources into it, but more does not necessarily make it more efficient. In many cases, it doesn't. And a lot of times you'll have people, I see this all the time, where people come to me like, hey, I want to automate this thing. It's like, well, why? And a lot of times it's not really a good answer. It's just like, well, because we're spending so much time doing it. It's like, well, why are you doing it? It's like, well, because we've always been doing it. It's like, why? And so
Do you find that there's a certain amount of whys you need to ask before you get to the real reason?
5.
Okay, because I've heard that before, but I don't know.
There's actually a methodology called the 5 whys, which comes from Mitsubishi. It's like 100 years old. And essentially it was a way of creating or identifying a root cause analysis of a problem. So you have a problem, you state the problem, and they say, why did that happen? Okay, now why did the why happen? And then why did the why, and keep going. And oftentimes people are able to sort of solve their own problems that way, and you can back it up. So, the thing wasn't delivered on time, whatever the client gets a proposal. Why? Well, because, the printer was not working. Why? Well, because it was out of ink. Why? Because we don't have an ordering process. You can back it up by that much. So, but there's a lot of why. And the problem is that a lot of times you ask that why and they don't answer.
Yeah.
My favorite is when people talk about who they are. Right. So get this whole time. How you been? Oh man, just so busy. So busy. It's like, cool. Okay. With what? I'm just
I try my best. Like I'm so guilty. Like that for years, that was my response. And the immediate response that a lot of people give is, well, busy's good. And it's not good. Like, yeah, good problem to have. Yeah. And we hear that all the time. And in reality, like as soon as busy comes to my brain, I immediately stop and I pause and I'm like, what can I use instead of that word? Because it's kind of just our go-to small talk word, and in reality, it's like, have I been productive? Have I been, busy doing the right things? Have I actually paid attention to where I'm busy and figured out how to make myself less busy? Because man, burnout's real, and it's a badge of honor. Like you see on social media where people are like hustle, 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 and not really talking about the negative effects of burnout and how long it takes to recover from.
Well, and it's a guarantee. That's the thing. And so a lot of the overwhelm is because, well, truthfully, a lot of the overwhelm is because people don't know what's causing the overwhelm. Yeah. Right. So they're just getting stung from every different direction, getting pulled from every direction. And human beings are really good at just digging faster. Like that's the most obvious thing for us. Like just push harder, just get through it. And sometimes you have to do that, but it gets really easy to sort of get into this rut where you're doing that. And then you just don't stop to like look up and be like, am I even heading in the right direction?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. No, I agree with you 100%.
So the idea of like doing the right thing is not an easy answer, and so you take a business, a trade business, for example, you've got sales, obviously, which is a really big one. And Some of that really depends on what revenue level you're at. Like I would say in general, when a company is in the 300,000 to $1 million revenue range, revenue is the most important thing like you could be focusing on. Like that's really, that's like a place where it's okay if the boss has to jump in on calls and do stuff. I would say you still need to have a system, and you still need to have the ability that things can keep moving if you're not there. But then at that point, you really should become an accelerant rather than like just the driving force. But once you get beyond that, then I would say customer service becomes a really big issue as well. And having retention and having people refer you and upsells and all those kinds of things. So those become a really big thing. And then in the middle there, we've got delivery, right? So you have to be able to efficiently deliver your services. That one is usually the easy one, right? Mm-hmm. Because knowing, you know, I know if there's, you know, a compressor went out on this HVAC, it's going to take me 2 hours to replace it. It's going to be this much. I've done this 1,000 times. I know what that is. That's a product more than a service at that point. It's all that stuff around it where we get really muddy, and it gets really easy to sort of jump in and do that. And the other thing that's really interesting about that too is that now the way where social media is at, content that I think people would have previously thought was not interesting or engaging is engaging and interesting to everybody now. Like I can't tell you how many videos I have watched to the end of somebody replacing a circuit breaker in a house and the POV camera. Like, you know, it's like it's one of those things like, what's going to happen next? And I know what's going to happen next. They're going to strip the wires. Then they're going to put them together, and then they're going to staple them in. But like, what's going to happen next? So they're and those are the things that like fall by the wayside when people get busy. But those are the things that differentiate you ultimately, and that you can refer to, and that give you credibility, and that make a business more predictable.
Absolutely. So when it comes to the productivity from the effectiveness, like in that in your content that you've been distinguishing the productivity, like separating the two of them, and where do you feel like the founders miss most often the differentiation between the two, and kind of what's the harm that happens by over productivity or automation and efficiency? And
so it's funny because over the years, one of the biggest critiques, or not critiques, but one of the biggest sort of negative focus questions that I get a lot of times is like, well, if you're doing all this optimization, you're doing all this automation, and you're outsourcing it to other people, like, aren't you removing a lot of the human element to what you're doing?
Yeah.
Especially as someone I'm a coach, like that's an important element. And my response is always for 15 years been the same thing, which is that it's the opposite, is that all that stuff allows me to enhance a human element because I'm not thinking about or dealing with the mundane BS that would get in the way of that, right? I don't have to be in a conversation with a client and be thinking about, you know, do I have to like write up notes for this afterwards, and then I'm send them an invoice and stuff like that? Like, oh wait, that was a really good idea. I think I should make some content on that. Like, and then you're gone.
Yeah.
Right? So all these systems, if you do them right, enhance that. But what a lot of people do is the opposite. They end up, you know, you have somebody who sees an ad for a service that will do auto calling, you know, 1,000 people and start selling it. It's like, you don't even have a sales script. So what are they selling?
Yep.
They're selling a generic service. Okay, great. So then when they get to you, they're going to expect a generic service because they don't know any better, and they're going to be a terrible client, and they're going to be pissed off, and you're going to get 2-star reviews on Google, right? So like, we see that all the time. Because something looks shiny, and I'm supposed to be making phone calls, right? So why don't I just hire a service and do that? You can't do that until you have your own process in place.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because if you haven't optimized the process yet, you're going to automate shit, and you're going to get a big old pile of shit. It's what you're going to get if you haven't optimized the process prior to automating it. And
furthermore, like, it's not that you have to start from scratch or reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of people who have done these things, but you need a process. You know, you need a way of doing things and a reason for why you do them that way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree.
Hello, home service professionals. Do you want to maximize your marketing budget? Then you need to be using call tracking from CallRail. Let's say you noticed a spike in new leads this month. To find out what's driving them, you just log into your CallRail dashboard. Is my new Facebook ad outperforming my other ads? Or is paid search knocking it out of the park? Or maybe it's time to retire those newspaper ads. Since CallRail assigns a unique phone number to each of my marketing efforts, I know where my best leads come from and which efforts to scrap. CallRail shows you your most cost-effective marketing channels so you can get back to business. Go to callrail.com/SBMpod and try it for free.
Today's episode is powered by Xero Systems.
Xero is all about removing the clutter and unnecessary touch points to run your home service business profitably.
They use AI dispatching to get the right tech to the right call automatically and job time efficiency to ensure your entire team runs like a profit-generating machine.
Get a tech upgrade for your business at get.xero.tech/service-business-mastery. When it comes to coaching, you mentioned that you do coaching, and I love your style of coaching. And
Me too.
You too. The asynchronous, like we went to an event sometime a couple years back in Jersey, and you asked the whole crowd, like, hey, who knows what asynchronous communication is? And people were like, yeah, I think so. But there was kind of like this weird, like, I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about, but I don't know for sure. And then you kind of explained asynchronous conversations and how they actually work. And back then it was Voxer, now it's Carbon I know that was one of your preference apps. But I love the idea, and this is how email was supposed to be. Text messages were supposed to be asynchronous, but they've turned into the little green dot or the blue dots, where you're like watching someone else type out their message, their response, and then you're anticipating, like you're sitting there waiting, and you might as well just pick up the phone at that point and have the conversation. But can you explain asynchronous and why it's beneficial, especially in the coaching world side of things for you?
Yeah, well, so first of all, it's actually really easy to explain when I'm talking to people who have worked in the trade stuff, because everyone remembers the Nextel push to talk phones, right? So Carbon Voice, which the app that I use, is very, very similar in some ways, although you don't have to be there live to listen. That's the main difference. So asynchronous is the opposite of what Tersh and I are doing right now, right? So this is synchronous. I can talk, he can nod like he's doing. I can, we can feed off each other in that way.
Yep.
Asynchronous is the opposite. I send a message, and again, I use a tool called Carbon Voice. Anybody who wants is welcome to get in touch with me directly on there. You can go to talktoari.com, and they'll tell you how to do it. And I can send a voice message as long as I want, talk about whatever I want, and then they can hear it and listen to it whenever they want, including live. They can listen to it while I'm sending it, or they can listen to it later. And what that means is that I can have clients all around the world, as I do, and I don't do any live calls. So I individually coach 2 to 3 dozen founders at a time in multiple time zones, and I don't have a single call on my schedule, right? It's like an amazing new world. When I started coaching 15 years ago, I maybe max out at 10 clients and 12 clients that have, hour and a half sessions with them each week. So it's a lot more convenient, but we're talking about effectiveness, right? I truly believe that this is the most effective form of coaching that I ever have done, because 2 main things. One, a client, let's say they would blow up with a employee on a Thursday, right? And they're not going to talk to me till our appointment on Wednesday. So they have to carry that through the weekend. Other issues are come up. By the time they get to Wednesday, they don't even know what they want to talk about. They're just unload for 43 minutes, and then it's like, well, we're out of time. Or they walk out of this meeting and they send me a Carbon Voice and they are cursing and yelling. And like, this was, and then I can hear it and digest it and listen to it again and listen to it at 2 times speed if I want to. And then 2 hours later, give them that 90-second silver bullet that they need to get on with their day and move on to the next issue. So I'm spending less time and I'm being more surgical and giving them the answers they need to move things along. We can also deal with 15 issues in the time that we might have been able to deal with 1.
Yeah.
That's the first step. The second thing is that, and this was sort of unexpected when I started doing this, but when people are able to talk into basically a vacuum, and you think about like podcasting, if you're by yourself, you're not, you're just talking to the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
You open up and you share things, and you you dig in a way that you just don't when there's somebody else there. And this is certainly not a critique, right? But as I'm talking, you smiled and you nodded, right? And so I'm like, yeah, I'm on the right track. Like it's gonna unconsciously change the way that I say something or how I show up, or do I speak, is he getting bored? So let me speed this up, wrap this up. That doesn't happen. So I had a client send me a 45-minute long Carbon voice message the other day. And one of the things that's great with Carbon Voice is that it automatically transcribes, does an AI summary, can do a bulleted summary, and can pull out action items for me. So I did listen to the whole thing, but I don't have to be like 100% on it necessarily, because I'm also checking the transcript. It's giving me the bullet points, all that kind of stuff. And then I can automatically create to-do cards for myself in Trello, and and it's just so much more effective that way. Plus, there's an infinite record then. Like I can always go back and see what somebody said. There's built-in AI, so you'll be like, did they talk about the thing, and it'll tell me. So it's really this superior way of communicating, in my opinion. And on a third one too is that people are best at different times of day and different places, right? So I can't make content unless I'm out walking my dogs, basically. Every one of my videos you'll see, like I'm out moving around. I try to do something at my desk here, and it's not. So I need to be moving. I need to be mobile and listening to stuff. And then that's where ideas come. That's where I'm able to listen and really focus. And you might have somebody at 11 o'clock at night. They really need to unload something. And then I can get it at 5 a.m. when I get up, and then I can go back and forth. So it's great. But also I use it for my sales. So anybody, like I said, can go to talktoari.com. They can send me a message. We can have a conversation. And you basically get to experience coaching with me before you even sign up, because the platform is the pitch at that point.
Yeah. That is really interesting. And the great thing is as a lot of people don't realize how much their circadian rhythm is different from other people. And like you're productive at this time of day, and then Ari's productive at this time of day, or is going to have a conversation at this time of day. And then what I've found is that like my wife, she just does not sleep at all if she has something on her mind. And so you can just dump it right into Carbon, or into your notes or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's off your brain. Then you can have a good restful night's sleep. And it helps out a ton being able to do that. And then not being worried. My biggest thing is like Slack messages. I have a screen that's just open with my Slack for my team. And on the weekend, something might happen. And I'm like, hey, I need to send this message. And I try my best to make sure I schedule the send for Monday, because I don't want to disturb people because a lot of people, even though they're not supposed to, I tell them not to have Slack notifications turned on the weekend, they will. And then all of a sudden they'll respond to something on a Sunday or whatever. And I'm like, I didn't want that. I wanted you to do this on Monday. And they're like, yeah, I know, but I want to take care of it right now. And because then I put that burden on them. And a lot of people don't realize that you're actually, now you're burdening them. They have to remember to do it on Monday or whatever. But the having asynchronous, like for real, legit asynchronous conversations is really good. But you have to train yourself to do it, because I think we've trained ourselves to do the exact opposite. Like if somebody sends me an email, I have to respond to it right now. Or if they send me a text message, I need to respond to it right now. And so it takes some intentionality for that, for sure.
Yeah, and part of that too is setting the expectations, right? So my clients, like I don't set an expected response time. So it's never like you'll hear back from me in 48 hours.
Yeah.
Normally, I'd say I could probably get back to people like in less than 4 hours, but I'm also gone on vacation for a week and not told anybody and didn't.
Yeah. And it happens. And it's great that people don't have that expectation, because then all of a sudden that's whenever they start getting upset. When they're like, hey, I thought you were going to call me back or message me back in 48 hours. And you're like, it's been 49 hours.
Well, right. And then the other thing too, which is really important about being able to communicate asynchronously, is if you can do it anywhere, anytime, that plays into something that is a very important concept for me, which is a work-life integration. Work-life balance is total bullshit. That's not a concept that we actually can achieve, because the whole idea of it makes no sense. It also sets up work and life as this diametrically opposed thing.
Yep.
a lot of us really like the work that we do.
Exactly.
Integration, work-life balance is like, oh, I don't take work calls after 5 p.m. My phone's off. It's like, that your brain is going to still be like wondering, let me just check.
Yeah.
Integration is like, hey, I just dropped my kids off in front of the school gym so that they can go play their basketball game. While I'm going to park, I'm going to respond to 3 Carbon voice messages and go sit down.
So I actually have another question that almost dives directly into. And we talked earlier about the replaceable founder concept and being able to not necessarily replace yourself, but be replaceable. But how does someone balance like deep personal responsibilities, the responsibility for their business, with the idea of becoming replaceable?
What do you mean by personal responsibility?
So like what your tasks are each day, like, or your perceived task for the day.
So yeah, should have daily tasks, right? Like necessarily, unless some of that is something you can do by Carbon voice, right? So like, I'll give you an example. So one of the things that we do I always have companies implement this when we can, a daily asynchronous stand-up, right? So a lot of companies have stand-ups, right? Start off the day like, these are the big clients, these are the big blockers, this is what I'm working on. We could do that asynchronously. Carbon voice is a great way to do that. So one of the teams I'm dealing with right now, we got 12 people in 3 time zones. 7 a.m. a message pops up into a group Carbon voice. Says, hey, everybody, it's time to check in. What are you working on today? And what is your biggest obstacle? And within 2-3 hours, usually everybody's checked in. You hear everybody's voice, you know what's going on, and you're good. So that could be a daily task, but you can do that from anywhere and really almost any time. So if we can remove the timing element from some of that stuff, then that's a big one. And that's sort of it's a bit of a mental exercise to be like, well, this is something I have to do at my desk. It's like, well, what if you couldn't? What if you couldn't do this? What if you could do this right after you drop your kids off at school and they get out of the car, and you could do it on the way home? What if you could do it then? So it's not about balancing necessarily. It's figuring out a way to do the work in a way that works for you.
How do you, as the founder, like there's different mental types. Like there's people who are like very type A, hey, we got to do this. We have to have a 7:30 check-in every single day, and I need you to check in at 7:30 sharp or something like that. And then there's other people who are like, man, I don't function until I get my coffee, or like I'm not good at having like a thoughtful conversation until like the second half of the day. Mm-hmm. How do you coach a person that is maybe has that kind of thought process, and like they're very rigid, and they wake up at 5 a.m. and they have their coffee at 5:05 and they're ready to go at 5:15, and then the next person is like, don't talk to me before 10.
Yeah, so it's really the same answer. It's the asynchronous communication ultimately that does that. So I'm that first one, right? So I worked out at 5:30 this morning, and
I'm the second one.
Yeah. Great. So as long as the people in my world don't have their notifications turned on at 5:30 in the morning, then they don't have to worry about it, right? So sure. On my way to my workout, which is 7 minutes away, so one of the things that I can do with Carbon voice also, and I know I'm talking a lot about Carbon voice, but you can do this with a lot of tools.
Yeah.
So I can send a message that becomes a task in Trello automatically. I can also send a message that becomes an email newsletter automatically. I can send a message that becomes multiple social media captions as well. So on my way to my workout, which is like a 4-minute drive, I recorded a blog post, 2 tasks for Trello, and I responded to 2 clients very quickly. Right. And then it's like, all right, now I get to go work out for 40 minutes. I don't have to think about those things. I had the idea. Now they're out of my head, and they get
like that is, I love that thought process. And I love the idea of that. Like I've been playing around with automations on my iPhone. So like I take a screenshot. If I take a screenshot of something and it analyzes it, and it's like, hey, that was, if it was garbage, then it puts it in this folder, review, throw it in the trash. And then it also will, if it's like a screenshot of a conversation, then it actually put the whole conversation together and put it into a folder. And so like I'm playing around with some of these automation things because there's so many times where I'll screenshot something to do later and then go back to my screenshots and have 10,000 screenshots. And you're like, which one of these? And half of these are irrelevant. They need to be deleted, but I don't want to go through and delete the 87,000 photos that I have in there that are duplicates or whatever. And that just becomes a massive time suck in itself. I was going to ask you though, we're in a world right now that is like every time you turn around, there's a new app for something else. You know what I mean? And when my team, like my team on my HVAC in my HVAC company, I'll say something about an app and they're like, here we go. He's about to introduce a new app that we got to all learn. And then in 6 months, he's going to change it to a different app. And, you know, and then they're like, all right, Tersh, you got to chill out with this. Like I literally have somebody on my team that's like, hey, this person tries out, like I bounce things off of that person and they're like, that's cool, but the rest of the team is not going to love that. And I have that realization about myself. So like, I know Slack is where I got to stay because people have learned it. And there's so much integrations that can be done inside of Slack that what would you say to someone else who feels that way?
So I love apps. I love new technology. I keep track of thousands of things. I've got 34,000 notes in Evernote about, stuff I've captured. A newer tool, which is great for that, by the way, is called MEM AI, MEM, like memory. I like to know about them.
Yeah.
But the truth is that for the most part, I've been using the same apps for probably over 10 years now. I've got Trello, Slack, Gmail, and now Carbon Voice. Like for me to, and by the way, I was using Voxer for almost a decade, as you know.
I do.
Carbon Voice came along, and it was funny because the CEO reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he's like, "I'd love to talk to you about this app," and I sent him back my my Voxer link. He was like, and I didn't even pay attention. I was just like, "Here's Voxer," and he's like, "Well, no," it's like, "I'd really like you to try my platform to see if you like it," and I didn't actually, and
really?
I told him why. I gave him a whole bunch of suggestions, and to his credit, so I have been a big Voxer guy for a very long time, and I've to the CEO multiple times. I have made a dozen or so suggestions of things over the years, and they've never implemented a single one.
Okay.
With Carbon, I gave him like 3 or 4 pieces of feedback, and like 4 days later, he's like, "All right, we did it all. Like, will you try it now?" And it was great. And so, and I'll continue to do that. And now, full disclosure, like I am an advisor at that company. But for something,
I remember when you went from Voxer to Carbon, you were inside Voxer and said, "Hey, I got this new app. We're going to transition over to this." And it was there was not another message on Voxer. I was like, "Oh shit, I got to find Carbon. I'm not going to be able to talk to Ari anymore."
Yeah, and the thing is well, so right, and to make that kind of switch, like the app has to be 200% better than the other one, and that just does not happen very often. So
yeah,
I use Trello for project management. I love it. There are 100 things out there. ClickUp is making very, very big moves, but
it's overwhelming though.
I agree. And so it's actually interesting because right now I am looking at bringing on a ClickUp like architect from Fiverr to
get what we did.
We set up correctly.
Yeah.
But all that to say, have you seen an ad for pharmaceutical lately? Any medicines at some point, right? Ever?
I don't. I do my best. Sure. Yeah.
Right. So the problem is that it's like, hey, do you have, like restless leg syndrome, or like does one of your testicles lay lower than the other one? It's like, yeah,
well, maybe so.
And then you go to the doctor, like, I want the Xarelta thing that I just saw. Yeah. That's what it is when you see an app. Like, you shouldn't just be like, oh, there's this new app that looks so cool. I want to figure out a way to make my life work with it. It should be like, I have this problem that I've identified because I actually looked at why we have this thing. Like, we send invoices every day. Well, why? Why do you do that? Well, because, we've always been using Quicken or whatever. It's like, well, half of your clients are paying with Zelle. So why are you using,
Yeah.
Once you figure out why you're doing it, then you can look for a tool to fix your problem. But don't find a tool that fixes a problem you don't have.
Yeah, there's so many times I like when I'm talking to somebody about automation, building out an automation for their company, they were like, "Well, what can I automate?" Well, what problem do you have? like what are we trying to solve here? Because like I have a list of 100 different automations that we built out for one CRM or one FSM. But if none of those are problems that you have, then we're just automating to automate. And we're not actually solving a problem. And then there's no value in it. And so now it becomes another job, another task for somebody else to do that's not actually moving the needle any further along.
Correct.
So, inside of replaceable, you mentioned Evernote earlier, and inside of replaceable Founder, I believe that you mentioned a couple of those apps. At least in the audio version of it, it could be replaceable. Might be less doing. I don't know, man. Honestly, I've listened to them all, and I get them confused. I mix them up sometimes. But in one of your books, there's a couple of apps, and you're very adamant, like, hey, like this isn't referral, this isn't affiliate marketing type stuff. This is just an app that I use. Yeah. And some of those apps, how do you like? There's some of them that are honestly just they've fallen on by the wayside, and there's a couple of them where it's like, oh man, this thing used to be pretty good, but now I'm like struggling because there's probably another app that keeps up with it. How are you dealing with that?
Do you have any one?
Not right off the top of my head. I did a while back, and it was actually it was whenever you were talking about getting a VA. And it was one of the VA companies. I don't even think they were in business anymore or something. I don't know. Remember.
Virtual or something like that.
Yeah.
So Fancy Hands was a big one that I had recommended at the time, but their quality just got so bad at some point.
That's what it was.
Stop recommending. Yeah, it happens. It happens a lot. And it's funny because when I wrote the first book, I had all these tools and apps in it. And then in the second version of the book, I tried to not do that because I wanted to be more timeless. And nowadays, like the pace of app development and it's just so crazy. I mean, I like while we've been talking, I have something running in the background building 2 apps for me right now, which is like ridiculous. So I'm gonna get off this call, be able to beta test my app that I came up with, before I got covered in my son's shit. Sorry. So actually, so I built a voice agent to be able to interact with Trello, so it can tell me what's on a card, what's the latest update, and then I can update it with my voice. It's something
that is cool.
I think the future is voice in a lot of ways. Like there's so much more that we can do with voice. One of the things now I think is a huge litmus test, right, is how much AI and how good the AI is. So like Evernote, which everyone knows me for writing about Evernote for so many years, their AI sucks. Like I haven't used Evernote in a long time, and it just it doesn't work, right? So now for the most part, when I find new links and things like that, actually now I've been using MEM AI, which is really good, but otherwise I've basically just been capturing them to a specific ChatGPT chat, because again, it's like it's not like, oh, I got to remember to try out this app. It's more like when the time comes that this problem may or may not arise, I want to know like an app that I had found that had some decent stuff to it. But even so, the other thing now with all the LLMs is that you don't need to know in advance what it is, because now you can be like, what's the best app to do this thing today? So I just got my first client from ChatGPT last week. This guy signed up and I said, how'd you find out about me? And usually, I mean, the answer is like, oh, I've been following your stuff for a long time. I read your books and this. Like that's what Bill said. This guy was like, a couple weeks ago, my partner and I asked Chat like who would be a good coach to help us get through this particular phase of the business, and 3 people came up. You were one of them, and we liked your stuff. It's like, cool, okay,
that's cool.
So today, if I'm going to say like, I use lovable.dev to build websites, but what's the best website AI builder today? It might be like, hey, Lovable is the best one you got right now, or Lovable's good, but you should try this and that. So Seth Godin, the great marketing guy, a long time ago, he said, anything worth remembering is worth Googling. Like, so like, it's not, there's certain things that we should be using our brain for and certain things that we shouldn't.
Yeah. And so so we're out of time, but can you really hit quickly on an external brain?
Yeah. So the human brain is great for coming up with ideas. It's really bad at holding on to them. So you need to have an external brain of some sort. You already gave an example, right? You do that screenshot. It tells you what's going on and you can do something with that. So you need to have a way of capturing ideas anywhere and every time you have one. So screenshot on the phone is a great one. Anytime one of these, what did Alexa? So, right. So like I can say, Alexa, add this thing to my to-do list. It'll put it in. So all this stuff goes into a Trello card. It makes its own Trello card for me. And then at the end of the night, usually it's part of my like night routine. I can go through Trello and I can sort things. It's like, this is something that I want to send to a VA. This is something I need to buy. This is something I want to read. This is a big project I need to break down, so on and so forth. So capturing those ideas anywhere and anytime, and voice is a great way to do that. I can leave a carbon voice message and that turns into a Trello card. So never, it's not that you shouldn't use your brain, but it's like you shouldn't be relying on that.
Mm-hmm.
And especially entrepreneurs, we have ideas all the time.
All day. Yeah. Every time you run into an issue, you're like, we should do this instead. And then you get back to the office and you're like, what was it that I was thinking about? We were dealing. And so how long, so this is the thing that I get, this is the roadblock I get most often. I'll do a presentation and I'll talk about all these amazing AIs and this automations that we've done. And, we're doing 200,000 zaps a month. And they're like, how do I get started? Like, and how long did it take you to get I'm like, well, we've been using Zapier for as long as Zapier's been around almost. And so like, that's why we have so many, because we literally were like, hey, this is a problem, let's solve it with this automation. And to the point where like, I don't remember majority of the automations that we do. And I started building custom GPTs for the same reason. But what do you say to someone when they're like just getting started with automations and in general, and they're like, hey, how long is this going to take? Because you literally, you spoke about the checkbook and the bill pay. Like, this is the very first time that I ever met you in person. You said this has been a long time ago now. I think we both had a full set of hair then, but no, I'm just kidding. It's been a long time.
For my productivity life that I have hair.
Same here, same. But honestly, you were talking about bill pay and how much time it saves. But then the roadblock is, well, how much time did it take to set up?
Yeah. So there's a few different ways to attack that, and I'll try to make it quick. First one is, you shouldn't be thinking about that necessarily. I mean, within reason. If it's going to take you 3 hours to save 3 minutes, don't do that. But automation and optimization is a muscle. So if you spend some time automating something, even if the ROI on that specific task might not be there, I promise you that skill is transferable and it will come up later. Right. So if you're spending time with Zapier and like, oh, now I have to go research how to use this tool and that tool, and at the end of the day, I saved 20 seconds. Like, yeah, but now you know how to use this tool and that tool with Zapier. So something else might come up and you can really use that and be like, what if I did that here? The thing is that don't start with some very, very big complex project or process, right? So don't start with like your customer onboarding or your hiring process. You could, but those are complex, and you're going to spend a lot of time and not necessarily even know what you should be automating properly.
Yep.
Think of the really small tasks, and there's two things to think about. One is the word every. You've heard me say this before. Anytime you hear the word every, like every time we get a new job, every time a customer complains, every time we see a new review on Google, the word every tells you that this is repeatable. It's repetitive, rather. So if it's repetitive, you probably can automate all of it. And if you can't do all of it, I guarantee you can do some of it. That's a really great place to start. And those are the small things. And those are the things that might take 1 or 2 minutes every time, but they're adding up to, hours and hours. And then the other one is think less sometimes about automating tasks and more about automating decisions, because those are the things that really have a heavy cognitive load. So, something really simple, do we take jobs in this zip code? Yes or no? It's not like, it's right over the line there. I mean, no, just settle. Okay, then change the line. But just those are the kinds of things where, actually, that's a really good example, because that's the kind of thing where somebody in the office has a process and they're like, but it's so close. And then they call the boss, like, hey, I just want to ask you if maybe we can take this job. Boss isn't available. So now 2 hours later, the boss is like, oh yeah, we can take that job. And they come back and the client's already gotten somebody else to do it. Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Have a rule in place. Automate those decisions, the things that would ordinarily require bandwidth and mental cognitive load that you just don't have.
Dang. Yeah, that's sums it up in right there, mic drop. How can people connect with you to learn more, grow using you?
best way is talk to Ari.com. Just get on there and it explains how to get on Corporate Voice. And it's me. It's not a VA. It's not automation. Ask me a question. Tell me where you're at with the business. I love hearing about it. I love helping people with that kind of stuff. And I truly do mean that. Reach out.
Absolutely. Cool, man. I appreciate it. As always, it's always fun talking to you. And we could talk for days on this stuff. So if anybody has any questions at all, do not hesitate to reach out to Ari. He is a wealth of knowledge. Make sure you're following him on all the platforms, TikTok and LinkedIn. He does a lot of writing on LinkedIn as well. So with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful and safe week. Oh, don't forget to get on the email list too. And
.com.
Let'sdoing.com. Let'sdoing.com. All right, cool. Appreciate you, buddy. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Service Business Mastery. Now that you are equipped with essential business advice from this impactful conversation, you are one step closer to becoming the successful owner of your dreams. If this episode has been helpful to your business journey, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and share it with other owners as well. Visit servicebusinessmastery.com to learn more.